Hi everyone, I'm Cassie. I'm a marine biology graduate student at the University of Maine, and in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to give you a crash course on what Maine's lobster supply chain is, the research I'm a part of that focuses in on the supply chain, and check in with you folks on what I've been doing recently to prep our heart rate monitors, the little backpacks you see on the lobsters and some of the footage throughout the video, for our upcoming field season. If I asked you what image or memory pops up in your mind when I say Maine, you may first think of lobster. And we all know that lobster is a huge icon for Maine, and that's no surprise as it's the most valuable single species fisheries in the entire United States. But have you ever wondered what kind of journey does a lobster experience before it reaches your plate? Let me walk you through Maine's lobster supply chain. The supply chain begins at the bottom of the ocean when a lobster gets caught in a trap. It's then hauled by a fisherman and it's put on a tank in the boat. When the fisherman is done with their day, they bring the lobsters to a wharf where they're transferred to crates and they're held at the dock or an indoor tank facility. Later that day or the next day, a truck will come and it'll bring the crates to a lobster dealer or wholesaler. From there, lobsters will be shipped domestically or internationally where they're delivered to a grocery store, a restaurant, or sometimes directly to a consumer. During a lobster's time in the supply chain, they are subjected to all kinds of different stresses, such as fast changes in temperature, pressure, air exposure, or handling. And the stress that the lobster endures while in the supply chain can sometimes result in mortality. And that's where the research that I'm a part of comes in. The University of Maine Lobster Institute created a team of industry members and researchers to come together and monitor and understand what kinds of stressors are there in the supply chain and how do those stressors influence mortality. And then together we'll come up with mitigation strategies to lessen the impacts from those stressors. And the results from this will allow the industry to become more valuable and resilient. Our team consists of members from the Maine Lobster Dealers Association, the Maine Lobstermen's Association, Ready Seafood, Luke's Lobster, and Inland Seafood, as well as researchers from the University of Maine, St. Joseph's College, and Wells National Estuarine Research Reserve. The collaborative nature of our team allows us to share perspectives and ideas on the research, and it strengthens our procedure and presumably our results as well. So how do we monitor the supply chain for these stressors? First, we are monitoring each stage in the supply chain from trap all the way to dealer, and we're observing different kinds of environmental conditions such as the temperature, dissolved oxygen, or motion. And one of our team members, Ben Gutzler, created a novel heart rate monitor that will tell us the heart rate of lobsters, which is a great indicator of stress. We are also looking at the physical conditions of the lobsters after they go through the supply chain so we can find the relationships between the environmental data that we collect and the lobster's physical condition. The heart rate monitors are super cool and I've been prepping them for the field season, so let's go visit the Darling Marine Center's new flowing seawater lab to learn more about those. I want to make sure that all the equipment that we are planning to put in the field works properly, there's no problems, and they're all calibrated correctly. So this is what I'm doing right now. I have these test lobsters, and I'm putting on heart rate monitors to make sure that our heart rate monitors are doing exactly what they should be. So here's a test lobster I have. I have each of them labeled, and this heart rate monitor is attached with zip ties. It goes over its body, lays on its back. Its legs still have total mobility and movement. And it records the heart rate at the back side of its carapace, and that's where the heart is. And it records 2 times a second. And so after a few days, I'll take it off the lobster, look at the data, and make sure that everything is looking good and there's no bugs or problems. Here you can see what the heart rate data looks like. On the top panel, there's an activity index, so you can think of this as movement. And then on the lower panel, there's heart rate, and this is of a lobster moving throughout a simulated supply chain for about 48 hours, and it goes from a trap to a tank on board a boat to a refrigerated tank at a dealer, and it's known as a purge tank, and then it's moved to a second holding tank after grading. Note this low lobster activity but high heart rate while it's in the trap, high activity and high heart rate while it's on the tank in a boat, and then there's a depressed activity and heart rate once it's transferred to these chilled storage tanks on shore. The arrows mark a sudden change in the lobster's heart rate and activity, and this indicates to us a potentially stressful time point. Data like this is a great example that shows the potential value of this type of monitoring for assessing stressors, and this will help us determine mitigation strategies to lessen these stressors. Thank you so much for coming and listening about the Maine lobster supply chain and the research that we're doing here. If you have any questions about what I just talked about, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is here on the screen, and I would love to answer any questions that you might have.